Now, just for understanding it, it really is not whole of the Palestine or whole of the Gaza and West Bank, etc. conflict. Um, it is admitted that it is Hamas, which is the military arm of Muslim Brotherhood, and which had got elected in 2007 in Gaza Strip, is the one who started the throwing of rockets and then capturing the hostages also. So the hostage issue is important. Number may not be that large, 220 or so, some of whom have been returned and some of whom have died. And the big excuse, I would call it excuse, of Israel is to go and bomb place A, B, C, D, E, hospitals, hospitals which have been built with the aid of Indonesia, Turkey, Europe, etc., etc., are all getting bombed, saying that there are headquarters of Hamas below, but there is no evidence whichever comes before or afterwards that in fact Hamas operations were there before that. Obviously, it's a small place, very highly crowded, so even Hamas would be kind of distributed along with the civil population. They are not a formal military of a formal country. On the other hand, PLO has not yet entered the war. They have only said, and they are the ones which have some international legitimacy, but they are also quite soft because they would like to work with Israel, while Hamas thinks that um, uh, they have taken away lands of Palestinians and made them refugees in their own land. So we will therefore call it Israel-Hamas conflict and not overall a Palestinian conflict. Now, we can look at the global growth and the inflation impact of these scenarios for how the Israel and Hamas conflict would evolve. So we can take the confined war, we can take the proxy war when Lebanon and Syria get involved, and um, so look at the first the impact on oil prices, one of the variables, plus $4 per barrel if it is confined war, which has already happened actually. Proxy war, if it is there, is $8 per barrel, and if it is direct war, it goes up to $64 per barrel. So you can imagine in terms of number of trillion dollars the impact it has. And of course, all the other economies get affected because of the oil price. Oil, in fact, has already gone up by about $8. So we are into the 90s now. And um, if there is a direct war, that means Iran, etc., are also involved, and Middle East gets involved. Then this has another side to the story, which we are not covering in this particular session, but that the previous war, 2014, a big movement had developed called the BDS movement. That is boycott, disinvest, and um, sanctions on Israel, because that time also there were resolutions of the General Assembly, UN General Assembly, and Israel hardly did anything. And this time also, while the resolution is there, 120 people have supported that resolution. USA, Israel, and a few other small states have opposed it, and then the rest 45 abstentions are there. But Israel is not likely to take care of it. Saying it's not binding. Even if it is binding, what do you do? Because USA is with them. Um, um, However, that movement last time did not pick up that much. The movement has not died, and this is called a peaceful alternative that put pressure, just like USA puts pressure of sanctions, 40 countries, and it put sanctions on Russia also. Um, but they don't want to put. That means US and Europe don't want to put sanctions on Israel, because Israel is like their own baby. Um, um, So if the sanctions movement becomes stronger, and by the way, each one of those major persons supporting or even not supporting BDS takes it to Martin Luther King and Gandhiji in terms of the non-cooperation movements, and say that we should follow this non-violent process of bringing Israel to its knees, because it is going to get more affected if there are economic sanctions rather than any sermonizing which goes on. Now we can look at what drive prices, and we can go back to again 2014 as a case study. That was at that time kidnap and murder of 3 Israelis by Hamas, and then it led to Gaza invasion, more than 2,000 people dead. It, however, did not fighting did not spread beyond the Palestinian territory, and its impact on oil prices and the global economy was therefore muted. But we can see the relationship between when events happen and when the Russia event happens. Then the cutting of the output by OPEC is another tool. Last year they cut out the output by 2 million barrels per day, and it had an impact. If we put Russia and Saudi Arabia, just two countries, also together, they have very substantial output. So the impact on the global economy under this scenario would be minimal, especially if Saudi Arabia and the UAE offsets lost Iranian barrels using their. Now, presumption is that only Iran will cut down its production, which is anyway under sanction. Israel also is dependent on oil from outside, and its gas wells have been shut off because of the rockets, etc., etc. So Israel is dependent on this from the outside, while the Mediterranean Sea has been blocked by the flotilla of the US. But the shortage is there because Ukraine also has to be fed with oil, and then Iran is there, and so on. That, any case, will lead to increase in prices. Now let's see overall what will happen to the growth. 3 scenarios are there: confined war, proxy war, direct war. Global GDP in the 3 scenarios will be affected in the following ways. Confined war would perhaps not have much impact. The actual GDP growth between the previous 5-6 years is given, and we see that the drop is about a percentage each when we go to the next one. Now remember, this is global economy, so we are talking maybe trillions of or thereabouts. This is order of magnitude of global economy, and out of which a couple of percentage means $2 trillion. $2 trillion is, well, close to, certainly more than Israel GDP, but it's close to the Indian GDP. So that much impact can be there, and this is annual impact. And Israeli economy is important in many ways, as I said, for high-tech things, chips, of course, diamond cutting, and so on and so forth. So what if the war does spread and Hezbollah, which is supported by Iran, gets in? Iran and Hezbollah are monitoring and assessing the situation. If this carnage goes on as Israel is doing, then there is a possibility. Now, bloody Israel-Hezbollah war of 2006, the crude had jumped by $5 a barrel. Now, again, you have to look at how many million barrels are produced in a day, and that is 100 million barrels a day. So $500 million a day is the impact, multiplied with 200 or 250, 300, and you get the enormity of impact which somebody else has to pay, and it goes into the pockets of the Middle East. 1973 conflict had also meant that Middle East done sanctions, reduced the output, and the prices became 3 to 4 times, and have never gone back to that $10 a barrel level. Now, an equivalent move today would send the prices up 10% to about $94. 10% up. So the daily thing you calculate by the number of barrels which are pumped out, about 100. If you're expecting 102, if that too is also held back, only 100 barrels are produced, 100 million barrels are produced, then we are looking at 10% rise in price. So nothing more has to be done. You just have to reduce the production. Thus, war could push the global inflation higher. Europe is already in not a very good shape. Last year, average growth was between 0 to 1%. This year, it is likely to be 0. So no growth. And how the inflation is there, 4 to 5 to 6%. So global inflation in these three scenarios will be, as stated here, baseline is about 3%, and the inflation could go up to 6%. Now that makes a lot of difference again. And if it is proxy war, then about 5%. In India, already inflation is more than 6%, though the growth is 6.4%. Now, the high toll in Israel increases the likelihood of a bloody retaliation and a regional war. Now, this was written just after 7th, and that bloody retaliation has already been there, and it has been far more than what the world had expected. Word is crying that every day so many children and women dying who are not combatants, and this carnage must stop. And bombing of the schools and colleges and the UN health centers and the hospitals and all that is not done by any civilized society or any civilized government. Yes, Israel has also suffered. Nobody condones that. But one wrong does not mean that you do another wrong and it becomes right. There is no reason for Israel to kill so many children and women away. What for? When you're hitting a hospital, why are you hitting a hospital? Maybe 1, 2 guys are there and all that. You find some other ways of ferreting them out. So, Middle East are in fetters. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the US-China trade war shows that geopolitics is back as a driver of economic and market outcomes. If the tensions, Taiwan-related tensions and tensions in South China Sea keep on increasing, this Middle East issue has been burning since 1948, and every time there is an escalation, and then it's a little bit of quiet, enough ammunition gets made, and then again you start it. Both sides, and therefore it's a bad thing for them. It's a bad thing for the region, because the intelligence of the Israelis, their tech savviness and all that, would be of great use to the rest of the world, including the Arab world. For example, the drip irrigation, the chips. So they have great potential of winning the heart. And you never win any hearts by indiscriminately killing the civilians. No, you don't. Now, what is the potential solution to conflict? A one-state solution. That means a single state will be formed by including Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza Strip. And two-state solution is 2 countries will be created in the form of Israel and Palestine. Now, this slide could have been there 60 years ago, 50 years ago, in 2014. And there was a time that there was some consensus for a two-state solution. There, then the issue was, how much area for whom, etc., etc., because proposals which were made, and recall there were a number of peace conferences, Madrid and Oslo and Camp David and Abraham Accords, and Oslo Accords and Oslo Accords done through when Bill Clinton was the president. Till today, no implementation. 1993, today. 30 years, no implementation. So most of these accords are also namesake, goes on, and then they come back. And it's not a question of one party or the other. Both parties have a blame for it because both parties have very strong personal interests. And uh, and the interestingly the leadership has been quite stable. Um, PLO has had only two presidents till now. Um, Yasser Arafat first till his death, and now Mr. Abbas, who's also about 80 plus, and goes on. Then there were Kerry proposals, John Kerry, Senator John Kerry proposals when he was vice president, I think. Yeah, and then it just fizzled out. I just picked up a lot of debates for 7 years ago, done in Oxford and Cambridge, and we will be linking it up, which talk about why two-state solution is not going to work out. The final reason is that unless there is a trust, unless there is a confidence in each other, and the desire to implement what you decide, it's not easy for either party because in Israel also they have to convince their own constituencies. They have their political parties. But Mr. Netanyahu has been there since about 2000, and Abbas has also been there since 2004 or so on as president. So about the same time, both know each other, etc., etc. If they want, they can work it out. Now, whether third party will be able to help them or not is also questionable because when they've done it, uh, Israel will probably listen only to the U.S. U.S. has its own huge population, which is very powerful, and which also controls media. So, considering these factors, uh, this goes on. And also, Oslo Accords were done in '93. Uh, it's an and it's an ongoing American mediated effort to broker a peace treaty between Israel and. But they were called Oslo Accord because Norway had taken the initiative earlier. And when these peace accords were done, the Israeli Prime Minister and Mr. Yasser Arafat and the Defense Minister of Israel also got a shared Nobel Prize. Now, so therefore, conclusion so far is that ongoing conflict has escalated geopolitical tensions. Uh, at least four proposals were put in the UN Security Council, and they were all vetoed. Now, USA, UK vetoing even a proposal for a ceasefire is not understandable to me. They're saying, obviously, that they want to give time to Israel to beat up the Gaza Strip people very thoroughly. But is this beating not enough? 10,000 people died. Is this beating not enough when 1 million people out of 2.2 million people have had to leave their refugee home again to find another refugee home somewhere? Who will build it for them? And when everything important for life, fuel, power, water, electricity, medical facilities, all cut off. That means आप तो तड़पा रहे हैं उनको. You are really hitting them hard everywhere, anywhere which you can. And 30 plus journalists have died, and most of it is targeted killing. Their homes have been bombed. One person who's in charge of the Arabic news network of Al Jazeera in Gaza, his family, 14 members were killed. They were staying in the north, in their own home. Say you go to south, the moment they reach the refugee camp, they all get bombed. Which means this is not just by the way. This is very worked out. Okay, so current reluctance of the Israeli government and other stakeholders exacerbates the problem. A balanced approach is crucial. I know the subject is very tough. Two very nice, good meaning persons can sit with good amount of analytical ability and also line with the decision makers, which I don't have, and come to opposite conclusions. And both can perhaps give their own logic, etc. So sometimes it depends whose argument you are seeing. But the human argument does not change. That this is not good for humanity. This is not civilized behavior. You can say that Palestinians are terrorists and all that, while the others will say freedom fighters. And it is true that they are pressurized too much. But Israel is an educated society. Jews are the most educated people in USA also. They are the intellectuals. Look at the number of Nobel Prize winners, just in one thing, medical science. More than 50. Just in one, medical science. Then, of course, Einstein, it's half mc square, etc., etc. Therefore, one feels a little worse. The Prime Minister said he condemned the event and the attack by Hamas on Israeli. This was a bit surprising because the last 60, 70 years, India had been always taking a pro-Palestinian stand and saying that they are the party which has been oppressed. And then India's position was perhaps dictated because we have ourselves been affected by the terrorist attacks very substantially, and the strategy of the neighbor Pakistan has been, in fact, to send the non-state actors, though they may be paid by the state, by the ISI and Taliban and Jaish-e-Mohammed and various other factions. And that is what created the disturbance in Kashmir for all these years, even after 1967 war. And therefore, it's an anti-terrorist stand. Of course, we have our Khalistani issue, where every now and then it comes up. So India did, therefore, denounce the actions of Hamas, but without saying anything about Israel. Long-term position is, of course, and it is consistent when it comes to the larger Israel-Palestinian issue. India has always been in favor of a peaceful solution. It was one of the first ones to recognize Israel. It was perhaps the first one outside the Arab world to recognize PLO, and there were very good relationships with PLO, Yasser Arafat and Mrs. Indira Gandhi, our Prime Minister at that time, who also came to condole at her death and so on. And there has been some or the other aid relationship, but not of a high order. So final outcome is that in continuation of its policy, India is likely to call for a peaceful end to the conflict. This is what it has done, but to the surprise of various countries and people, it abstained from the vote in the UNGA, that is the UN General Assembly, when they called for a ceasefire. It has been trying to retract a little bit from that policy, but this will get clearer when we know what the relationship of Israel and India has become. It has become quite strong. Going forward, we just have reference to a map which tells us where Palestine is, where Jerusalem is, in the vicinity, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and then there is a Gaza Strip in the corner, and West Bank on the other corner near Lebanon. Now, as the attack was there by Hamas on 7th, on Tuesday, the next day, the market first crashed by about 8% in Israel and a few percentage points elsewhere, and then it bounced back. Market tries to take into account various things and probabilities as to long-term impacts and short-term impacts. Now, history we already know, but just to brush it, conflict between the two country traces origin back to 19th century, mid-19th century, and the early 20th centuries. The Jewish Zionists sought to establish homeland, and that's the meaning of Zionism. Also, nothing more complicated. At that time, it was an Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire broke down after First World War, and the territories got divided between French and UK. So UK had a protectorate over Iraq and Palestine, while France had it over Lebanon and Syria. So this is the bottom roots of the different viewpoints also. Then tensions escalated, and it led to the 1947 UN partition plan. Jewish leaders accepted the plan, Arab leaders rejected it, resulting in the 1948 Arab-Israeli war. It was at that time called Arab-Israeli rather than Palestinian.